AITA for refusing to let my sister use my house as a temporary home, even though she's going through a tough time. I, 34F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I live in a 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb, have a stable job, and generally like to keep my space organized and calm. My sister, Jenna, 30F, is the opposite. She's brilliant and funny, but she's very impulsive and has had a string of messy relationships and jobs that barely last more than a year. She's currently in the middle of a breakup with her boyfriend of 3 years, and according to her, it's been the worst time of her life. Last week, she called me late at night, crying, and told me she had nowhere to go. Apparently, her boyfriend kicked her out after an argument, and she had no friends nearby who could take her in. She begged me to let her stay at my house for a week or two until she figures things out. I was sympathetic, of course. I care about my sister, but I also know her history of overstaying her welcome and leaving chaos behind. I told her I needed to think about it. I work from home, and my house is my sanctuary. I'm introverted, and having someone stay with me unannounced, especially someone who doesn't respect boundaries, is stressful for me. I suggested she look into short-term rentals or staying with a friend closer to where she works. I also offered to help her financially or drive her to appointments, but she refused. The next day, she came over anyway. She didn't ask first. She just showed up with her luggage and her dog. I was shocked and told her that I was not ready to have her stay. She started crying and saying I was being selfish and that family is supposed to help each other during hard times. I said I understand she's hurting, but I can't put my mental health and peace at risk, and she can't just move in uninvited. She left after a few hours, but she hasn't spoken to me much since. Our parents got involved after she called them, and they were furious with me. They said I should have let her stay because she has nowhere else to go, and that I'm prioritizing my comfort over family. I tried to explain that I'm not refusing to help her completely. I offered money, help with logistics, and emotional support, but they didn't accept that. My mom said I was heartless, and my dad said I was cold and unfeeling. Here's where it gets messy, eh? A few days later, I found out through mutual friends that Jenna told people I abandoned her and turned my back on family in her hour of need. Some of my friends and even a few coworkers reached out to check if I'm okay, assuming I had done something horrible. This made me really anxious, and I started doubting myself. I reached out to my sister again and tried to explain my boundaries gently. I told her I would help her find a place to stay, cover her moving costs, and even help her dog stay in a pet-friendly boarding facility if she needed it. She responded that I'm making everything more complicated than it has to be, and that she can't believe I'm choosing a house over my own sister. Now, I'm torn. Part of me feels like I did the right thing because I set boundaries and my mental health is important. But another part of me feels guilty because she is genuinely struggling, and I can't shake the idea that I should have been more compassionate. The tension in my family is unbearable. Our parents keep calling me to apologize to her. Jenna keeps sending passive-aggressive messages, and I feel like no matter what I do, someone will think I'm in the wrong. I have tried explaining to everyone that helping someone doesn't have to mean sacrificing your entire life for mental stability, but it seems like they think love and family are measured by how much you inconvenience yourself. I've considered letting her stay for a short period, but I worry that if I do, it will turn into months of chaos and resentment. I want to support my sister without losing myself, but now I'm starting to feel like the world is against me. AITA for refusing to let her stay at my house. Or should I just give in to my family's demands, even if it feels like it will destroy my peace of mind? I know this story is long, but I wanted to give all the context so people understand both sides. My sister is in pain, yes, but I also have a right to protect my space and mental health. I really don't know how to navigate this without either completely alienating my family or completely giving up on my boundaries. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding after what happened last Christmas. This has been bothering me for months, and I need to know if I'm in the wrong. So, some context. I'm 28, female, and my cousin, let's call her Emily, is 30. We've always been close as kids, but as adults, our family's dynamics have gotten more complicated. My parents and her parents have very different approaches to holidays and family gatherings. Her family is extremely traditional and very focused on appearances and etiquette, while mine is more laid back and informal. Growing up, this sometimes caused tension during family events, but I thought we had a decent understanding. Last Christmas, Emily invited me to her parents' house for the holiday dinner. I didn't hesitate to accept. We had exchanged messages throughout December and were planning a secret gift exchange for fun. I wanted it to be a casual, fun evening. I arrived on time and noticed immediately that things felt more formal than expected. Everyone was dressed very nicely, and there was a seating plan. That wasn't the problem, though. I can handle formal dinners. The problem started with the gift exchange. We were supposed to exchange small, inexpensive gifts. I bought Emily a handmade scarf that I'd spent weeks knitting. I was excited because I knew she liked that style, and I had even customized it with her favorite colors. When it was her turn, she handed me a gift that was extremely generic, a pair of socks from a large department store. I didn't mind that much because I know it's the thought that counts, but what happened next caught me completely off guard. Emily made a big show of unwrapping my gift in front of everyone. Instead of thanking me, she held up the scarf, looked at me, and said loudly, "Oh, wow. You made this yourself? That's creative. I guess it's a little different from what I expected. It's kind of old-fashioned, don't you think?" She then proceeded to critique the stitching and the color choices, commenting that the pink and teal together was an unusual combination, and that I should have used softer yarn. Everyone at the table went silent, and I felt my face turn red. I tried to laugh it off and said something like, "I thought you'd like it." But she kept going, pointing out what she considered flaws, and even compared it to scarves that she said her coworkers had received from expensive boutiques. At that point, I felt humiliated. It wasn't just that she didn't like the gift. It was the way she deliberately made me feel small in front of the entire family. Her parents, who were usually warm, didn't intervene, and some of the older cousins awkwardly looked away. I ended up leaving early, claiming I wasn't feeling well, and went home crying. I thought maybe it was just a rough night, but the next day, Emily sent me a long text saying she didn't mean to hurt my feelings, but that she was just being honest, and family should be honest with each other. I didn't reply, because honestly, I was too hurt and felt disrespected. Fast forward to now. Emily is getting married in 3 months. She sent out formal invitations and explicitly mentioned that she hopes I'll attend. My parents think I should go, and even some mutual friends are saying I should forgive and forget. But I feel like attending would be giving her tacit approval for how she treated me. I also don't want to relive that kind of humiliation in front of her family again. I decided to decline the invitation, sending a polite note saying I couldn't make it due to prior commitments. Emily didn't take it well. She called me multiple times over a week, leaving increasingly frustrated messages, saying things like, "I can't believe you're letting one silly gift ruin our relationship," and "I thought we were family. How can you just throw away years of friendship?" She even started posting subtle things on social media about family being divided and how some people just don't care about family, clearly directed at me. My parents are now caught in the middle. They told me that Emily has always been sensitive, but that I should just go and smooth things over because family weddings are important. My siblings are divided. One of them says I'm overreacting and need to forgive, while the other agrees that what Emily did was humiliating and that my feelings are valid. I've tried explaining to Emily that I felt publicly embarrassed and hurt by the way she treated me during Christmas, but she keeps framing it as me being too sensitive and that my refusal to attend is a personal attack on her. Honestly, I feel exhausted just thinking about being around her and her family for an entire wedding day, potentially facing more passive-aggressive comments or criticism. I don't want to start a scene, but I also don't want to feel obligated to be happy and celebratory around someone who made me feel small. Some friends say I should go for appearance's sake and just grin and bear it, while others say it's okay to set boundaries and skip family events where I feel unsafe emotionally. I'm torn because I want to maintain some level of relationship with my cousin, but I also feel like my self-respect matters. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my cousin Emily's wedding because of how she treated me last Christmas? Is skipping an overreaction? Or am I justified in prioritizing my own emotional well-being? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what happened to my own. I, 32M, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 28F. We grew up in a small town, so our families have always been tight-knit, and we've leaned on each other through just about everything. We have very different personalities. I'm more reserved and organized, while she's outgoing and spontaneous. But our bond has been unshakable until recently. A little over a year ago, I got engaged to my girlfriend, Sarah, 30F. Sarah and I had been together for 6 years, so we were both excited to finally make it official. We started planning a small wedding with close family and friends, nothing extravagant because I wanted it to be intimate and meaningful. Emily, however, had her own ideas. She immediately started talking about how this will be the best wedding ever, and we have to make it perfect for Instagram. I tried to politely set boundaries, explaining that we wanted a low-key event, but Emily insisted on being helpful. As the months went on, her involvement became overwhelming. She booked a photographer I hadn't approved, reserved a venue without asking, and even started inviting distant relatives I hadn't met. I tried to communicate that we wanted to make our own choices, but Emily became defensive, claiming that I was rejecting family and that I didn't trust her judgment. The breaking point came a week before the wedding. Emily decided to organize a bachelorette party for Sarah and all of our friends. That would have been fine, except she made it a surprise weekend getaway, charged everyone for expensive activities, and didn't check with Sarah about dates. Sarah was uncomfortable but didn't want to hurt Emily's feelings, so she went along. I only found out because a friend mentioned it in passing. I confronted Emily about it, telling her we had explicitly agreed that planning should go through Sarah and me. She accused me of being controlling and said, "It's your wedding, not your relationship with your friends." I tried to explain that it wasn't about control, but about respect for our boundaries, but she refused to listen. The wedding day itself was stressful, to say the least. Emily tried to insert herself into the ceremony, giving a speech we hadn't asked for and walking into the photo sessions we hadn't arranged. During the reception, she made a point of loudly criticizing the seating arrangements, claiming she had fixed them better. I overheard her telling other guests that Sarah and I were too uptight and should loosen up. Sarah was devastated, and I was furious, but I tried to keep the day moving. After the wedding, things cooled down slightly, but the tension remained. Emily sent me a message saying she felt underappreciated and ostracized because we hadn't included her in every single decision. I tried to apologize for any hurt feelings while reiterating that our boundaries were important. She replied with a long message that essentially blamed me for ruining her chance to shine and claimed that our family was now on her side. I didn't respond. Fast forward to last month, Emily got engaged to her boyfriend, Jake, 31M. She called me excitedly to invite me to her wedding, but immediately started listing all the ways she expected me to help. She wanted me to coordinate with vendors, manage the guest list, and even handle the seating chart. I reminded her that my own wedding had been ruined by similar behavior, and I didn't feel comfortable taking on that role. She was hurt, but said she understood. Then came the twist. Emily's wedding is this summer, and she dropped a bomb. She invited Sarah to be a bridesmaid. I wasn't upset that Sarah was invited. I think it's sweet, but she also expects Sarah to participate in all the planning and attend every pre-wedding event. Sarah told me she feels uncomfortable because Emily is very controlling and Sarah doesn't want to get caught in the middle again. I fully support her decision to skip anything that makes her uncomfortable. The issue escalated when Emily asked if I would attend the wedding at all. I hesitated. I love my sister, but after everything that happened at my own wedding, I don't feel like I can go and have a good time without reliving all the stress. I'm worried that she'll try to dominate every detail, criticize my choices, or create conflict between me and Sarah. I told Emily I might not attend, and her response was shocking. She accused me of being selfish, jealous, and unwilling to support her on her special day. She said I'm punishing her for my own wedding and that if I don't show up, our family will see me as the bad sibling. I tried to explain calmly that attending a wedding isn't just about showing up. It's about celebrating without anxiety or conflict. I don't feel that's possible with Emily. I suggested maybe a smaller family dinner or meeting up afterward, but she refused and said it wouldn't be the same. Our parents are also involved now. They say I should go for the sake of family unity, but I feel like that's asking me to ignore past grievances and put myself in a stressful situation. I haven't made a final decision yet, but the guilt is eating at me. I love Emily, but I also have to protect my mental health and my relationship with Sarah. I know not attending will hurt her and probably upset my parents, but I honestly feel like going would be a disaster waiting to happen. I also don't want to create any scenes that could make Sarah uncomfortable. So, AITA for considering skipping my sister's wedding after what she did at mine. I feel like I have valid reasons, but I can't shake the feeling that I might be overreacting. Has anyone else dealt with a situation like this? I'm trying to balance family obligations with personal boundaries, but it feels impossible. If you made it this far, thanks for reading. I really just want to do the right thing without repeating past mistakes. AITA for confronting my brother about his parenting choices at my own family gathering. So, this all started during the holidays when my extended family gathered at my parents' house. I, 32F, have a younger brother, Mark, 28M, who is married to Jenna, 27F. They have 2 kids, Lucas, who is 6, and Emma, who just turned 3. Mark and Jenna are generally good people, but their parenting style has always been a bit unconventional. I tend to be more traditional in my approach, and over the years, I've noticed things that worry me, although I've mostly kept them to myself because I didn't want to start family drama. This year, during Christmas dinner, the usual chaos of kids running around was in full swing. Lucas had a tendency to get really loud and stubborn when he didn't get his way, which can be challenging for anyone, but especially at a family event. Jenna, instead of disciplining him in a structured way, tends to use a mix of negotiation, bribery, and what I can only describe as extreme appeasement. For example, Lucas wanted a second helping of dessert even though he had already eaten a full slice of pie. Jenna asked him nicely, then offered to make him a different treat, and finally gave in completely when he threw a minor tantrum. This isn't unusual for her, but what happened next escalated things. Lucas started knocking over some chairs in the living room, and Emma, who was toddling nearby, nearly tripped and fell. I calmly asked Lucas to stop and reminded him gently that his sister could get hurt. Mark, instead of backing me up, said something like, "He's just excited. Let him be." Jenna followed up with, "Come on, he's only 6. Let him enjoy himself." At this point, I realized that the kids were being allowed to run wild in a way that felt unsafe. I decided to speak to Mark privately after dinner. I pulled him aside in the kitchen and explained my concerns, focusing on Lucas' behavior and how it seemed to lack consistent boundaries. I tried to keep my tone neutral and framed it as concern, not criticism. Mark immediately got defensive. He said I didn't understand his parenting philosophy and that I was being judgmental. He argued that he wanted his kids to feel free to express themselves and that I was overreacting. I tried to explain that freedom is important, but children also need structure to learn boundaries. He accused me of trying to control his family and stormed off. I didn't push further, thinking maybe he just needed space. The next day, I noticed a few small incidents like Lucas climbing on the dining table and knocking over decorations while Jenna watched and filmed it on her phone, laughing. Emma tried to imitate him, and a few of the older cousins quickly intervened. I felt increasingly uneasy, so I pulled Jenna aside and asked if she felt safe letting the kids behave that way. She laughed it off and said, "It's fine, they'll be okay." I pressed a little harder, suggesting that someone could get hurt, and she said something along the lines of, "You just don't get it. Kids should be kids. You're way too uptight." By the third day of our family gathering, things came to a head. Mark and Jenna were encouraging a game of indoor tag, and Lucas ended up sliding across the hardwood floor and knocking over a glass vase. It shattered everywhere, and Emma started crying after tripping on shard. I finally lost my patience. I raised my voice, which I almost never do, and told Mark that he needed to stop treating his kids like this was acceptable behavior. I reminded him that there are real safety issues involved, and that being fun as a parent didn't excuse reckless actions. I said that if he couldn't set boundaries, someone was going to get hurt. Mark exploded. He told me I had no right to lecture him at his own home with his kids present, and that I was being condescending. Jenna joined in, saying I was making everything worse and that I should leave them alone. A huge argument ensued, with other family members getting involved. Some sided with me, saying I was right to be concerned about safety. Others said I was overstepping and that it wasn't my responsibility to dictate how Mark and Jenna raised their children. I ended up leaving the gathering early because the tension was unbearable. Later that evening, I received a group text from my parents, saying they thought I had handled things poorly and that I should have approached it more subtly. They said that my confrontation embarrassed Mark and Jenna and that I had made the holidays stressful for everyone. Since then, Mark hasn't spoken to me, and Jenna's messages have been cold and distant. Other family members have asked me to let it go or stop being judgmental, but I genuinely feel that the kids' behavior was dangerous and that I would be irresponsible not to say something. I keep thinking that it's not about controlling them, but about safety and teaching the kids appropriate boundaries. I'm struggling because I feel like I was trying to prevent harm, but at the same time, I recognize that I may have approached it too aggressively. I didn't insult them personally, but my tone was firm and direct, and it clearly triggered a strong defensive reaction. So, Reddit AITA for confronting my brother about his parenting choices at our family gathering, even though it caused a huge argument and strained family relationships? Or should I have stayed silent, even though I felt the kids were at risk? AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after what happened at my own engagement? I, 32F, have always been close to my family, especially my younger brother, Matt, 28M. We grew up in a small town, and our parents have always been the kind to host big family gatherings, so naturally, events like birthdays, graduations, and holidays were always chaotic, but fun. That said, there has been a history of tension whenever it comes to big life events and how they are celebrated. My engagement, in particular, brought all of this to a head. About a year ago, I got engaged to my fiancé, David, 33M. We had been together for 6 years, and I was thrilled to finally be planning a wedding. We were both very particular about what we wanted, a small, intimate ceremony with close friends and family. We decided to rent a small venue in the countryside and keep the guest list to about 60 people. My family, particularly Matt, were vocal about wanting a bigger celebration. I tried to explain our vision, but there was a lot of resistance. My parents, instead of respecting our wishes, started hinting at how embarrassing it would be to have such a small wedding and subtly pressured us to invite more people. Despite the pushback, we went ahead. We sent the invitations, and everything seemed fine. However, the day of the engagement party, which I thought was going to be casual and cozy at my parents' house, turned into a nightmare. My parents had invited almost 20 extra people without consulting us, including distant cousins I had never met, neighbors, and some of my mom's coworkers. They acted as if it was their party, not ours. My brother, Matt, was one of the most vocal in this chaos. He criticized the decorations, made snide remarks about the food, and even tried to convince me to let him handle the guest list. At one point, he loudly told my fiancé that he needed to step up and host a better party, implying that our plans were inadequate. I tried to stay calm, but I was mortified. The night was a blur of unsolicited advice, judgment, and tension. Afterward, I told Matt and my parents that I felt disrespected and that next time, I wanted clear boundaries. My parents apologized, but my brother did not. He insisted that I was overreacting and that family just wants to celebrate together. I tried to let it go, but it left a lasting bitterness. David felt completely unwelcome, and for weeks he was distant, worried about future family events. Fast forward to last month, Matt announced that he was getting married. The wedding is happening in 3 months. From the start, he has been very controlling about the plans. He has been sending group texts to our family, dictating everything from the guest list to the table arrangements, and making passive-aggressive remarks about who really matters. He knows I had a small, controlled engagement, and I suspect he is trying to make a show of having a more extravagant wedding as some form of competition. When I received the invitation, I noticed a few things that bothered me. First, he included nearly 200 people, which I know is excessive even by our family standards. Second, he explicitly mentioned that I was expected to bring my fiancée, as well as my parents, and make sure everyone from your side of the family RSVPs. It sounded less like an invitation and more like an obligation. I tried to have a conversation with him about it, expressing that I was hurt by how my engagement party had gone and that I wasn't comfortable attending if it was going to be another event where I felt disrespected or sidelined. He laughed it off and told me that weddings are different and I'm just doing what's best for everyone. I explained to our parents that I was seriously considering not attending and they were torn. My mom begged me to go, saying it would break Matt's heart if I wasn't there. My dad, while sympathetic, said he understood my feelings but didn't want me to start a family feud. I felt trapped between my own emotional well-being and family obligations. I tried one last attempt to compromise. I suggested attending only the ceremony, leaving immediately after, and quietly sitting with David, avoiding all the drama. Matt refused, insisting that my presence at the reception was mandatory, and that if I couldn't commit to family, I shouldn't come at all. This made me realize that he wasn't interested in compromise. He wanted to assert control. Now, I've told Matt and my parents that I won't be attending the wedding. I plan to send a gift, a heartfelt note, and a family photo from a past event to show that I still care, but I simply cannot subject myself and my fiancé to another situation where we will be treated as secondary or judged for our choices. My parents are upset, Matt is furious, and the rest of the family is split. Some say I'm justified in protecting myself, while others accuse me of being petty and not supporting my brother on his big day. I understand that weddings are important, and I do want to maintain family relationships. But I also feel that my boundaries were ignored in my own engagement, and that attending Matt's wedding under these conditions would be emotionally harmful. I'm not trying to punish anyone, but I'm not willing to compromise my mental health and self-respect for the sake of appearances. So, AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after everything that happened at my engagement. AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend stay in my house for a month, even though she claims she needs a safe place. I, 32M, live alone in a small but cozy apartment in the city. My brother, Jason, 30M, has been in a long-term relationship with his girlfriend, Melissa, 29F, for about 4 years. I've met her enough times to know she's generally polite, but I've also noticed she can be very dramatic and somewhat manipulative when she wants something. I don't say that lightly, and I'll explain why it matters. A few weeks ago, Melissa called me out of the blue, sounding upset. She told me that she and Jason had a huge fight and that she needed a safe place to stay because she didn't feel comfortable going home. She didn't say much else, just that she needed somewhere to crash for a little while, and asked if she could stay at my place. I was taken aback. For context, my apartment is not exactly spacious. I live alone, with a one-bedroom setup. It's cozy and comfortable for me, but there's literally no extra bedroom. I do have a couch in the living room, but I also work from home, so having someone living with me temporarily would disrupt both my work and personal life significantly. I told her that I wasn't sure, but I'd think about it. Honestly, my first instinct was to say no outright because I've had experiences in the past with friends and extended family just crashing for a bit and overstaying their welcome. I've learned that what people think of as a temporary stay often turns into weeks or months, and that has a real impact on my mental health and comfort in my own home. Melissa then called Jason and, from what he told me later, explained to him that she was feeling unsafe and wanted to come to me. Jason called me himself the next day and tried to pressure me into saying yes. He said that Melissa was going through a lot and that it would be really selfish of me not to help her. He reminded me that I had a spare couch and that I could make it work. I tried to explain my side, how my space is very limited, how I work from home, and that I couldn't accommodate a long-term stay. But he insisted that it would only be for a month. A month! My brain immediately went into panic mode. I thought about my work, my privacy, my daily routine, and even the small things like having my kitchen and bathroom to myself. I also remembered that Melissa has a history of emotional manipulation with Jason. Whenever they argue, she tends to make things very dramatic and guilt him into taking her side, sometimes even in situations where she's clearly overreacting. I didn't want to be pulled into that dynamic. I told Jason that I couldn't agree to her staying with me for a month. I offered alternative suggestions. She could stay at a local hotel, or perhaps with one of her friends or other family members. I even offered to help her look up affordable short-term options. Jason got visibly upset and accused me of being heartless. He said I was prioritizing my comfort over someone else's safety, and that I was letting family down. The next day, Melissa sent me a text that was filled with emotional appeals. She said things like, "I thought you'd be there for me," and "I can't believe my own brother won't help me," and "I just feel so unsafe, and you're the only one I can turn to." I felt my chest tighten reading it, but I stood my ground. I responded politely, reiterating that I couldn't host her for a month, but that I wanted to help her find an alternative solution. She didn't reply after that. After a few days of silence, Jason called me again, more frustrated this time. He said Melissa was still upset and that she didn't feel safe staying anywhere else. He implied that if I refused to let her stay, it could ruin our relationship. I told him that my decision wasn't negotiable and that while I cared about him and Melissa, I had boundaries in my own home. He accused me of being cold and uncaring and eventually hung up on me. Now, the rest of my family is involved. When I spoke to my mom, she basically told me I was being selfish and that family should stick together in times of crisis. My dad called to ask if I had reconsidered, saying that sometimes you just have to put aside personal inconvenience for the greater good. I feel like no matter what I do, someone is going to view me as the villain. To clarify a few points, I'm not unwilling to help Melissa entirely. I offered to help her find a hotel, offered to help with logistics, and even offered to let her come over for short visits during the day. I genuinely worry about her safety, but I don't feel comfortable taking full responsibility for her living situation, especially when it's a month-long commitment in a space not designed for guests. I have a history of anxiety and need my personal space to function, particularly since I work from home. Having someone live with me for a month would be extremely disruptive and stressful. I've been thinking about whether I could have handled it differently. Maybe I could have offered a few nights on my couch, or maybe I could have been more proactive in helping her find other arrangements. But at the same time, I feel like I have a right to say no to something that would have a significant impact on my life. At this point, the tension between me and Jason is palpable. He hasn't spoken to me since our last call, and Melissa is apparently still upset. Other family members have asked me to reconsider, but I don't feel comfortable doing so. I feel like if I give in, I'll set a precedent that people can push me into situations that make me deeply uncomfortable, and I'll regret it. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend stay in my apartment for a month, even though she claims she needs a safe place. I feel like I'm being responsible for my own boundaries, but my family seems to think I'm being selfish. AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after years of feeling unappreciated. I have a complicated family situation, and I really need an outside perspective because I'm starting to question if I'm being unreasonable. My sister, Laura, and I have always had a strained relationship, though I tried to maintain a cordial bond for the sake of family events. Growing up, our parents were extremely biased toward her. She was the golden child, smart, outgoing, and always praised no matter what she did, while I was the quiet, introverted one who often felt invisible. I worked hard in school, got a scholarship, and tried to succeed on my own, but any achievement I had was either ignored or downplayed compared to her accomplishments. My parents would brag about her and compare me to her constantly, even into adulthood. Laura got engaged about a year ago, and from the start, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I genuinely wanted to be happy for her, but the way our parents and her fiancé, Mark, involved me, or rather, didn't involve me, made me anxious. I wasn't asked to be part of the planning in any meaningful way. She invited me to a couple of dress fittings and asked me to help with minor errands, like picking up flowers or running small errands. But every time I tried to offer ideas or suggest something, it was dismissed as me overthinking or complicating things. The one time I suggested a reasonable alternative to a seating arrangement, Laura got visibly annoyed and said, "You don't understand. It's not your wedding." It hurt, but I tried to let it go. Things escalated about 3 months ago. Laura asked me if I would host a small bridal shower at my house. I agreed hesitantly because I felt obligated, but when the day came, she criticized nearly everything. The decorations, the timing, the food, and even how I arranged the seating. She complained that I didn't make it fancy enough, and when I tried to explain that I was limited by budget and space, she said, "You're just lazy." I shouldn't have expected much. My parents chimed in, laughing at her jokes at my expense, which left me feeling humiliated. I ended up cleaning the mess for hours afterward, while Laura and her friends left early, leaving me to deal with everything alone. After that, I decided to set boundaries. I told Laura that I would support her on the wedding day itself, attend the events, and be polite, but I wouldn't be responsible for planning or organizing anything else. I explained that I felt unappreciated and exhausted from the last experience. Laura responded angrily, saying I was selfish and that family is supposed to support each other. She accused me of holding grudges over childhood issues and said that if I didn't help, she'd be hurt and might even uninvite me from parts of the wedding. Mark also got involved, messaging me privately, saying, "It's your sister's special day. Why would you make this about yourself?" I tried to reason with them, explaining that my refusal wasn't personal or out of malice, but that I was trying to take care of my own mental health. I reminded them of past incidents where my contributions were dismissed or mocked. I offered to help in small ways, like attending dress fittings or providing moral support, but I drew the line at hosting events, organizing favors, or handling anything that could be criticized later. Laura didn't accept that and started publicly complaining to friends and family about how uncaring I was being. Suddenly, it felt like everyone was against me. My parents have been particularly frustrating. They keep saying, "She's your sister. You have to put aside old grudges." But whenever I point out that they always favored her, they say I'm twisting the past and that I need to grow up. I tried having an honest conversation with my dad, who said, "Laura's happiness is more important than your feelings right now. You'll understand when you have your own family." That felt dismissive and unfair because I've spent my whole life prioritizing others' feelings while mine were ignored. To make matters worse, some family members have started messaging me privately, asking why I'm causing drama before the wedding. One cousin told me, "Just do what she wants. It's easier for everyone." It feels like no one is considering how I feel or acknowledging the pattern of favoritism and neglect. I feel trapped because if I assert boundaries, I'm painted as the villain, but if I ignore my feelings and help, I'll be miserable and probably humiliated again. The situation came to a head last week. Laura called me crying, saying she felt betrayed that I wouldn't host the rehearsal dinner. She said, "I thought I could count on you, but now I realize you never really cared about me." I stayed calm and said, "I care about you as my sister, but I can't put myself in a position where I'm going to feel hurt or mocked again. I'm willing to help in ways that don't compromise my boundaries." She accused me of being cold and selfish, and the conversation ended with her saying she might cut me out of the wedding events entirely. I am genuinely torn. Part of me feels guilty for not being more supportive, but another part feels that I've been mistreated my entire life and that it's finally okay to stand up for myself. I want to support my sister emotionally and celebrate her marriage, but I cannot put myself in situations where I feel devalued and unappreciated. I've tried compromise, but every compromise seems to be rejected or twisted into me being the bad sister. I've been receiving messages from friends and family asking why I'm being difficult, and even some coworkers have weighed in after learning about the drama. It's making me second-guess whether I'm overreacting. I just want to be treated like an equal family member, not someone who has to endure humiliation and be mocked for trying to help. So, AITA for refusing to take on significant responsibilities in my sister's wedding, given our history and how I've been treated, even if it means she might exclude me from some events? Or am I justified in setting boundaries for my own well-being, even at the risk of being labeled selfish? AITA for refusing to let my sister dictate how I parent my child? I, 32F, have always had a bit of a strained relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 28F. Growing up, She was the golden child in the eyes of our parents, high achiever, very charming, and always got the attention. I was more introverted, struggled with anxiety, and often felt invisible. We were close at times, but there has always been this underlying tension between us, mostly fueled by jealousy and competition, though neither of us would ever admit it. Fast forward a few years. I got married to my husband, Daniel, 34M, and last year we had our first child, a beautiful baby boy named Noah. From the beginning, I was determined to parent in a way that felt right for us and our family. Daniel has been incredibly supportive and very involved, so we share responsibilities and decisions equally. Emily, however, has never really respected boundaries when it comes to Noah. From the first week, she insisted on giving advice, commenting on every little thing, and subtly criticizing our choices. She would say things like, "You shouldn't feed him that at this age," or "I read that babies need more structured sleep routines," or "You really shouldn't be letting him cry like that." Daniel and I tried to brush it off at first, thinking she was just excited, but it became exhausting. The breaking point happened last month. Noah had been teething and was having a hard time sleeping, so we let him nap in our bed for comfort. Emily came over unannounced while we were putting him down and immediately started scolding me. She said it was disastrous for his development and that I was ruining him by letting him sleep in bed with us. I told her firmly that this was our choice and that she needed to respect it. She rolled her eyes and muttered that parenting isn't just about what you feel, it's about what's best for the child, before leaving in a huff. A few days later, she started texting me constantly with advice, links to articles, and even videos about parenting methods, telling me I was doing everything wrong. I responded politely but told her that I appreciated her concern and that we were confident in our parenting decisions. She didn't take the hint. Things escalated when she called Daniel and tried to convince him that I was making a huge mistake with how we were handling Noah. Daniel told her that we were on the same page and that she needed to stop interfering. I felt frustrated and disrespected, so I made the decision to limit Emily's access to Noah until she could respect our boundaries. I sent her a message explaining that we loved her, but she needed to stop giving unsolicited advice and criticizing our choices. I also said that if she continued, we would not allow her to be around Noah until she could respect us as parents. Emily exploded. She called me cold, ungrateful, and said I was punishing her for caring about her nephew. She went on social media, posting vague stories about how some people can't handle well-meaning advice, and implying I was a terrible sister and mother. She even told my parents that I had cut her off from the baby, which they confronted me about. I explained everything, but they seemed torn because they've always seen Emily as the more responsible sibling. Since then, Emily has barely spoken to me, and when she does, it's icy and passive-aggressive. She insists that I should be more open to guidance and listen to family. Daniel supports me completely, and my friends agree that Emily is overstepping, but my parents think I might be too harsh. I understand that Emily might genuinely care about Noah, but her behavior feels invasive, controlling, and judgmental. I have tried to communicate calmly and clearly, but nothing seems to satisfy her except for me doing exactly what she says. I'm starting to feel guilty because I love my sister, but I also feel that my right to parent my child in the way Daniel and I see fit is being challenged unfairly. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister dictate how I raise my child and limiting her access until she can respect boundaries. Some additional context that might be relevant. Emily has no children and has always expressed that she wants to have kids one day, so I think part of her judgment comes from her ideas of what a good parent does rather than experience. She also has a very rigid personality. She likes rules, schedules, and structure, and she tends to project that onto others. Daniel and I lean more flexible, believe in attachment parenting practices, and prioritize emotional comfort and responsiveness over strict schedules. In the past, Emily has also had moments where she has been manipulative to get her way. For example, when we were teenagers, she would guilt-trip me into doing favors and then make me feel like I was the bad sibling for resisting. I feel like this is a continuation of that dynamic, just now with Noah in the middle. I've also tried to compromise. I suggested that she could help us in ways that don't interfere with parenting choices, like reading to Noah, playing with him, or helping with errands, but she brushed it off and continued to offer advice on how to feed, sleep, and discipline him. Recently, Daniel and I have been talking seriously about setting firmer boundaries and possibly even having Emily sign a kind of visitation agreement, so there is no ambiguity about expectations. Part of me worries that might be extreme, but another part thinks it's necessary to protect our family. At this point, I'm exhausted, stressed, and feel guilty for upsetting Emily, but I also feel confident that we're doing the right thing for our child and our marriage. I know family dynamics are complicated and maybe I'm being too rigid, but I honestly feel that as parents, Daniel and I should have the final say in how Noah is raised. Emily has consistently shown that she cannot respect that. I'm ready for honest feedback. AITA? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a long-standing family issue? I, 29F, come from a family that on the surface seems normal, but underneath, things have always been complicated. My parents divorced when I was very young, and since then, both my sister, 32F, and I have been navigating the fallout in different ways. My sister has always had a close relationship with my mother, while I have been closer to my father. Over the years, this has created tension that, while subtle, has been persistent. I've tried to remain neutral and cordial, but certain family dynamics have always made me uncomfortable. My sister recently got engaged, and from the beginning, I had mixed feelings. She asked me to be her maid of honor, which initially made me feel special, but as planning went on, I started noticing patterns that reminded me why I've kept my distance from some family events. From the guest list to the seating arrangements, it felt like the wedding was going to highlight existing tensions rather than celebrate unity. My mother, who is extremely controlling, has insisted on being heavily involved in every decision. I respect her experience, but her approach tends to overshadow everyone else, and I feared the day would become less about my sister and more about her. A month ago, the wedding planner whom my sister hired asked me to confirm my availability for several pre-wedding events. This included a bachelorette party, bridal shower, and a rehearsal dinner. The problem was that each event conflicted with work commitments or required me to spend money I couldn't comfortably afford. I expressed this to my sister, explaining that I wanted to celebrate with her but needed realistic expectations regarding my attendance. She reacted coldly, saying that it felt like I was prioritizing my job over family. I tried to clarify that it wasn't about not wanting to be there, but about managing logistics, but she insisted I was being inconsiderate. Things escalated when she revealed that the seating chart would place me at a table with extended family members I don't get along with, including a cousin who has been verbally aggressive toward me in the past. I voiced my concern about this arrangement, suggesting a neutral table or a smaller grouping of people I feel comfortable with. She brushed it off, saying it was just for one night, and that I should grow up and not be so dramatic. At that point, I realized that my attendance might not be welcomed in the spirit I intended. The final straw came during a family Zoom meeting, where my sister, my mother, and I discussed final wedding plans. My sister explicitly stated that she didn't want me to bring my partner, who I've been with for 5 years, to the wedding. According to her, the seating arrangements and her mother's influence made it impractical. I was stunned. My partner has always been supportive of our family, and I had assumed it would be natural for us to attend together. When I asked for clarification, my sister said that she didn't want drama and that my partner wouldn't fit in with the family dynamics. This felt like a personal attack, and I started to question whether my presence at all would be positive. I decided to have a private conversation with my sister to express my feelings. I explained that while I love her and want her to have a beautiful wedding, I couldn't in good conscience attend an event where I felt unwelcome and excluded. I emphasized that this decision was about protecting my mental health and avoiding conflict, not about rejecting her. She responded angrily, accusing me of trying to ruin her wedding and making everything about myself. My mother also got involved, sending me a series of texts that were increasingly critical, saying I was selfish and destroying family bonds. After that conversation, I made the difficult decision to formally decline attending the wedding. I sent a heartfelt message to my sister, wishing her happiness and success with the event, but stating clearly that I wouldn't be attending. I also explained that I would love to celebrate with her in a smaller, private setting afterward if she wanted. My partner supported my decision completely, saying that my well-being came first and that family events shouldn't come at the cost of my mental health. The fallout has been intense. My sister has not spoken to me since receiving my message, and my mother continues to bombard me with guilt-tripping messages. Extended family members have started asking me why I'm boycotting the wedding, framing it as if I'm the antagonist. Even friends who aren't involved in the family are confused, as they see weddings as events where everyone should set aside differences, and some have told me I'm overreacting. I'm not blind to the fact that this situation could have been handled differently, but I feel like I've exhausted reasonable options and prioritized my own well-being. I've also considered trying to attend the wedding last minute or making a compromise, like attending the ceremony, but not the reception. However, I fear this would be perceived as inconsistency or weakness, and it might not even alleviate the tension with my sister and mother. I'm torn between wanting to maintain some relationship with my sister and protecting myself from a potentially toxic situation. I feel deeply conflicted because I know my absence will hurt my sister, and the wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event for her. But I also know that attending under these circumstances could lead to more resentment, arguments, and emotional strain. I've tried reaching out for mediation, compromise, and understanding, but it seems like my concerns are being dismissed entirely. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I feel unwelcome, excluded, and concerned about family conflict? I am trying to balance love for my sister with a need to protect my own mental health, but the family sees my choice as selfish and destructive. I would like to hear an honest perspective. I don't want to feel like the villain in a story I didn't choose, but I also don't want to compromise my own boundaries and peace of mind for an event that feels like it could be emotionally harmful. AITA for refusing to lend my childhood home to my sister for her wedding. I, 32F, grew up in a small town in the Midwest, in a house that my parents built together. It wasn't a huge or luxurious home, but it was full of memories. Every corner held something meaningful, from my mom's hand-painted mural in the living room to my dad's old telescope in the attic. When my parents passed away a few years ago, they left the house to me, and I've kept it mostly as it was, though I moved back in after living in the city for several years. I take care of it, and it's my emotional anchor in a world that often feels chaotic. My sister, 30F, got engaged last year. She's always been more high-strung than me and tends to overplan everything. From the beginning, she told me she wanted a cozy, intimate, family-feeling wedding and immediately asked if she could have it at our childhood home. She said it would be meaningful because we grew up there and she wanted photos in the yard with the same tree we climbed as kids and all the sentimental things. I was initially flattered and happy she saw the house as special, but I also knew it would be complicated. The house is small, as I mentioned. The living room is barely big enough for a dinner table and chairs for 10 people, let alone a wedding setup. The yard isn't huge either, and there's barely enough parking for more than 6 cars. I explained this gently to her, and she insisted she could manage. She started talking about renting tents, portable bathrooms, and even a large catering setup. I tried to say that it felt like a lot to ask for, especially because the house isn't really set up for that many guests. She told me I was overthinking and that she was willing to handle all logistics herself. Then came the real problem. My sister told me she wanted to borrow the house for the entire week before the wedding to do preparations, including decorating every room and basically taking over the space. I told her I wasn't comfortable with that because I still live there and I work from home. I need quiet, and I can't just vacate my home for a week. She got upset, saying I was being selfish and that this was my one chance to have the wedding of my dreams in a place that matters. I reminded her that I didn't have a problem with her celebrating our childhood memories, but I wasn't willing to give up my home for an entire week. We argued, and she started bringing up the fact that I inherited the house and she didn't, which she said made me responsible for making everyone happy. She even mentioned that my parents would have wanted her to be able to use it, which I found unfair because I never asked for their blessing to keep it for myself. They left it to me legally. I tried suggesting alternatives, like renting a small venue in town that had a similar homely vibe or having a backyard wedding at her fiancé's parents' house. She rejected all of them, saying it wouldn't be the same, and that only our childhood home could provide the authentic feel she wanted. The situation escalated when she said she'd just booked the house without my permission. I reminded her that legally, I can't just hand it over and that any damage or extra cleaning would be my responsibility. She accused me of being petty and ruining family memories. Things got tense enough that other family members got involved. My aunt sided with my sister, saying it was just a house and I should be generous, while my cousin backed me, saying that a home is more than a venue and that I have every right to say no. Eventually, she started bringing up compromises that all still involved me stepping completely out of the way, like moving all my furniture into storage, letting her paint walls, rearrange furniture, and basically live in the house for 10 days. I kept saying no. I even offered to let her come over to take photos in certain rooms or in the yard for a few hours, which she dismissed as not enough. The week before her wedding, she went so far as to post on social media about the house that raised us and implied I was being cruel for not letting her have her dream wedding there. Some mutual friends messaged me privately asking why I wouldn't just let her use it, and it's been a very stressful situation. I've been feeling guilty because I love my sister and I want her to have a beautiful wedding, but I also feel like this is my home, and I'm not willing to let someone take it over for days on end for an event that isn't mine. Her wedding is next month, and we haven't spoken much since our last fight. I've offered to help in other ways, like hosting a brunch before or after the wedding, helping with invitations, or being heavily involved in the planning, but she keeps bringing the conversation back to the house. I know some people might see my actions as selfish, but I genuinely feel like the house is not a venue. It's my sanctuary, and turning it into an event space would destroy the personal, emotional value it holds for me. I also think my sister could have been more understanding of that. On the other hand, I see why she's upset. She wanted something sentimental, and she sees the house as the perfect place. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister use my childhood home for her wedding? Character count, 6,423. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emma, 26F, and we've always been close. Growing up, we shared everything, secrets, clothes, advice, even friends sometimes. Our parents divorced when we were teenagers, and Emma and I became each other's support system. Over the years, we've had our usual sisterly disagreements, but nothing major that would cause a lasting rift. About 2 years ago, Emma started dating a man named Jason, 32M. At first, I didn't mind him too much. He seemed polite enough during family gatherings and polite on the phone. I admit, I wasn't immediately impressed by him. He's quiet and reserved, and I'm a very outspoken, extroverted person, so our personalities didn't click. But I thought, okay, she's happy, and maybe it's just first impressions. Over time, I started noticing things that genuinely concern me. Jason is controlling in subtle ways. He often comments on Emma's choices in a way that seemed more judgmental than teasing. For example, he once told her she shouldn't wear a certain dress because it might send the wrong message, even though it was a casual outfit for brunch with friends. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Things escalated when Emma got promoted at work. She was thrilled, but Jason repeatedly made remarks like, "Are you sure you can handle that?" Or, "I hope this doesn't change you." I told Emma that these comments didn't sit right with me, but she shrugged them off, saying he was just being protective. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but the pattern kept repeating. The real turning point came last year during the holidays. Emma invited me to spend Christmas with her and Jason at their apartment. I arrived and noticed the place was spotless, almost unnaturally so. Emma admitted that Jason had very strict rules about the house, down to where things could be placed. I made a casual comment about how strict he was being, and he snapped, telling me that Emma and I have our own standards, and it's best you respect them. I felt belittled, but Emma told me not to worry about it, that he just has quirks. Over the next several months, I started noticing more behavior that alarmed me. Jason would constantly try to insert himself into every aspect of Emma's life. He critiqued her friends, her career choices, and even her hobbies. Whenever I would talk to Emma about it, she would always defend him, claiming he just cares about her. I tried to be patient, thinking maybe I was too sensitive. The situation came to a head last month. Emma announced she was engaged, and the wedding planning started immediately. I was excited at first and offered to help in any way I could. But soon after, I realized Jason was controlling every aspect of the wedding too. He vetoed vendors, dictated the guest list, and even suggested that my parents shouldn't be allowed to give a toast because he didn't feel comfortable with their past divorce drama. I was shocked because Emma never voiced any objections. I confronted Emma privately, telling her that I felt her fiancé was overstepping and that it was starting to feel toxic. She got defensive and accused me of trying to undermine her relationship. I reminded her that I was concerned for her well-being and that I only wanted to make sure she was happy and safe. She said she appreciated my concern, but that I was making a big deal out of nothing and that I needed to respect her decisions. Last week, she sent me the official wedding invitation. I read through it and noticed that my name was listed last among the family members, and there was no mention of my boyfriend, whom she's met several times. It seemed minor, but given everything, I took it as another sign of Jason's influence. I tried reaching out to Emma to talk about it, but she didn't respond. After a lot of thought, I told Emma that I wouldn't be attending the wedding if Jason was there. I explained that I couldn't support a relationship that I believed was unhealthy and controlling, and that I didn't want to witness her being treated poorly. I offered to come if she attended alone, but she said that wouldn't make sense and accused me of choosing him over her. Now, my parents are upset with me. They think I'm overreacting and that I should put aside my differences to celebrate Emma's big day. My friends are split. Some think I'm justified. Others think I'm being dramatic. Emma hasn't spoken to me since I sent my message declining the invitation. I feel terrible for potentially hurting her, but I also feel like I can't ignore what I see as manipulative behavior. I want her to be happy, but I can't in good conscience celebrate a relationship that seems unhealthy. I know this might affect my relationship with her long term, but I don't know what else to do. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? AITA for refusing to invite my cousin's partner to my wedding after she disrespected my family? I, 29F, am currently planning my wedding with my fiancé, Mark, 31M, and the stress has been through the roof. One particular situation with my cousin, Rachel, 27F, has me second-guessing myself, so I'm turning to Reddit for an unbiased opinion. A bit of context. Rachel and I grew up very close. We shared bedrooms during visits, spent summers together, and confided in each other about pretty much everything. Our families are also really close, and our parents talk frequently. Rachel has always been outspoken, blunt, and sometimes a little tactless, but I never considered her behavior malicious. Rachel started dating her current partner, Alex, 30M, about 2 years ago. From the start, I didn't know him well. He seemed quiet and polite enough when I met him once or twice, but Rachel had a habit of constantly complaining about him, sometimes during family gatherings. She would make offhand comments about his job, his wardrobe, or his hobbies, which always made me uncomfortable. I try to stay neutral and not take sides because it's not my place to intervene in someone else's relationship. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, I sent out our preliminary wedding guest list to get an idea of numbers. Naturally, I included Rachel because she's family, and I intended to include her partner if she was still dating him by the time of the wedding. When I mentioned Alex, Rachel made a snide comment, saying, "Well, I don't know if he'll fit in with your kind of people." At first, I thought she was joking, but the tone was sharp, and it seemed more like a jab than teasing. Then came the real problem. A week later, during a family Zoom call, Rachel brought up an old story about my childhood that involved a very personal incident. She framed it in a way that made my parents look bad, exaggerating the details for humor. I tried to laugh it off, but she kept going, and Alex laughed along with her. My mom was visibly upset, and my dad tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. Later, I found out Rachel had posted the story on social media, tagging Alex and several mutual friends. I was furious, and I felt humiliated. I called Rachel privately and told her that sharing that story publicly was hurtful, that it involved private family matters, and that it needed to stop. She brushed it off, saying it was just a joke. "You're too sensitive." I tried explaining that weddings are emotional, and I didn't want any drama or humiliation around my family, but she kept arguing that I was overreacting. Alex, again, sided with her, which made me feel like both of them would be a risk for creating tension at the wedding. Now comes the wedding planning dilemma. Mark and I decided that the wedding should be a positive environment, and we want to minimize potential conflicts. I told Rachel that she's invited, but after the way she treated my family, Alex will not be invited. Rachel exploded, calling me unfair, discriminatory, and saying that I was targeting her partner out of spite. She insisted that if Alex can't come, she wouldn't either. She also started messaging my friends and extended family, painting me as controlling and unreasonable. My parents are split on this. My mom supports me because she understands a history and doesn't want Alex to cause tension. My dad says I should just invite him to avoid drama, but I worry that his presence would escalate things further. Mark is firmly on my side, agreeing that protecting the atmosphere of the wedding is more important than avoiding confrontation. I also want to note that Rachel has a history of being impulsive and defensive. In the past, she has walked out of family events because she didn't get her way or stormed off when someone disagreed with her. I have genuine concerns that if Alex attends, he will either cause drama directly or support Rachel in ways that disrupt the celebration. I feel torn. On one hand, I want Rachel at my wedding, but I also have to consider the feelings of my family and Mark. I feel like this isn't about being cruel or excluding her unfairly, but about preventing potential harm to the event and the people I love. On the other hand, Rachel frames this as me being controlling and punishing her, which makes me question whether I'm overreacting or being too rigid. We have tried to compromise by offering that Rachel could attend alone. She refuses, saying that it's unfair to separate them and that she won't be coming without Alex. I understand her perspective, but I also feel that asking me to allow Alex at the wedding after he participated in embarrassing and disrespectful behavior is not reasonable. Additionally, Rachel has publicly complained about other family events where she didn't get her way. For instance, she once criticized my brother for seating arrangements at a dinner party, even though he had thoughtfully considered everyone's needs. I worry that the wedding will become another instance where she turns minor frustrations into dramatic confrontations. I have also spoken to some friends who have witnessed Rachel's behavior, and they support my decision, saying it's reasonable to prioritize the wedding environment and protect my family. Others, however, are concerned that this will irreparably damage my relationship with Rachel, and I feel guilty about that. I genuinely want her at the wedding, but I also need to feel safe and comfortable celebrating one of the most important days of my life without stress or humiliation. I don't want to escalate further by engaging in public arguments or forcing anyone to attend, but I also feel that if I cave, it will set a precedent that disrespectful behavior is acceptable and that boundaries can be ignored without consequence. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to invite my cousin's partner to my wedding after she disrespected my family, knowing it may result in her not attending at all. AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids stay with me after she needed a break, and now everyone thinks I'm heartless. So, this is going to be a bit long, but I want to make sure I explain the situation properly. I, 29F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a small city. I work from home as a graphic designer, which means my job requires a lot of focus and long hours in front of a computer. My younger sister, Emily, 26F, has 2 kids, Liam, 7M, and Sophie, 4F. Emily is a single mom, and I've always tried to help her when I can, but this time, things got complicated. It started about 2 months ago when Emily texted me out of the blue asking if her kids could stay with me for a couple of days because she needed a break. At first, I was fine with it, assuming it would be like the usual sleepover or short visit. But then she said she wasn't just asking for a night or two. she needed them to stay for a week because she felt overwhelmed. She didn't have anyone else she could ask, and she said she had an important work project coming up. I hesitated because my apartment is small, and my workspace is basically my bedroom desk. I told her I couldn't host them for a whole week because I work from home, and I really need quiet and a schedule that doesn't involve kids running around constantly. I offered to have them over for a few hours a day or to do a couple of sleepovers over the weekend. Emily got upset, saying I was being unsupportive and selfish. I tried explaining my point calmly. I told her that I love her and her kids and that I genuinely want to help, but my apartment isn't set up for that kind of stay. I also said that even if I agreed, the week-long stay would be exhausting for me, and I might not be able to deliver on my work responsibilities, which could affect my career. She accused me of prioritizing my job over family and not caring about her struggles as a mom. That really hurt because I do care. I just don't have the capacity for a full week of childcare. Things got worse when Emily started posting on social media about being a single mom with no support and tagging me in posts that implied I was refusing to help. My parents, who are divorced but live in the same city, called me and said I should be more accommodating, that Emily is under a lot of stress, and that I need to be a good sister. I felt like I was being cornered from all sides, but I still couldn't see a solution that worked for everyone. A few weeks later, Emily tried a different tactic. She told me she had arranged a babysitter for her work hours, but she wanted the kids to stay at my place after the babysitter left so she could relax and recharge. Essentially, she wanted me to host them in the evenings and overnight while she had personal time. I was completely upfront that this still wouldn't work for me. I have specific deadlines and sometimes have to work late into the night. Plus, I was concerned about my own mental health. I've struggled with anxiety, and having two energetic kids in a small space for extended periods would be very stressful. At this point, Emily started sending me guilt-laden messages almost every day. Things like, "I guess family doesn't matter to you," and "I'm always there for you. Why can't you be there for me?" I responded politely but firmly, reiterating my boundaries. I even suggested she look into a short-term daycare program, a local children's activity center, or arranging playdates with her friends who have kids. She refused to consider any of these alternatives. Finally, last weekend, she called me crying, saying she had no one else to turn to and begged me again. I told her I couldn't do it. I offered to come over and help for a few hours, bring the kids to the park, or take them for a meal, but I could not have them stay overnight. She yelled at me, saying I was heartless and that I didn't care about her or the kids. After that, she blocked me on social media and hasn't spoken to me since. Now, my parents are upset. My mutual friends are saying I should have sacrificed a little, and even my coworkers know because Emily sent some messages that made their way around. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain, but I also feel like I have legitimate reasons for saying no. I have a demanding job, a small living space, and my own mental health to consider. I've never refused to help before, but this felt different. It was a long-term commitment I wasn't prepared to take on. I keep going back and forth. On one hand, I know Emily is overwhelmed, and I genuinely care about her and the kids. On the other hand, I also know that if I agreed to have them stay, I would resent it, and it might hurt both my career and my well-being. I feel trapped because everyone is telling me I should just do it for family, but I honestly don't see how that's feasible without serious personal consequences. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids stay with me for an extended period, even though she claims she needs a break. I really don't want to damage our relationship permanently, but I also can't compromise my own life to that extent. I know family is important, but I also feel like boundaries exist for a reason. I've offered alternative help, but no one seems to see that as valid support. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house for a month, even though she claims I'm being unreasonable. I, 32F, have always been pretty independent and private. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city where I work as a graphic designer. My younger sister, Lily, 28F, recently got engaged to a guy named Mark, 30M. I met Mark a few times, and while I don't hate him, I don't exactly feel a strong connection either. I've never had an issue with him, but I also don't have much in common with him. A couple of weeks ago, Lily called me in a panic. She explained that Mark's apartment was being fumigated because of a termite problem, and it was going to take about a month to fix. She asked if he could stay at my place during that time. My initial reaction was hesitation because my apartment is not particularly big, and I work from home, which makes having a guest for an extended period complicated. I told her that while I understood the situation, a month was just too long. I suggested that maybe they could rent a short-term Airbnb or see if one of Mark's friends or relatives could host him temporarily. Lily became upset and insisted that I was being selfish and that family should help each other out. She said that since I have a spare bedroom, it shouldn't be a problem. I tried explaining that I work from home and that having a full-time guest would be incredibly disruptive. I also said that it would affect my mental health because I value my personal space and need my routines to stay sane. She argued that it was just 1 month and that I was overreacting. After a few back and forths, I finally offered a compromise. Mark could stay for a weekend or a few days at a time, but not a full month. I also offered to help him look for temporary housing and even said I would contribute a bit to an Airbnb if necessary. Lily got extremely upset, saying that I was making things unnecessarily difficult and that this showed I didn't care about her or Mark. Things escalated further when I mentioned that if Mark stayed for a month, it would interfere with my work schedule. I have tight deadlines at the moment, and I can't afford to deal with someone being in my apartment constantly. Lily accused me of being cold and selfish, saying that I was putting my comfort over her future husband's urgent housing need. I haven't spoken to her much since that conversation. A mutual friend told me that Lily is very upset and has been telling people that I'm refusing to help family in need. Some friends have reached out to ask me why I'm being so unreasonable, and I've tried to explain my side, but I feel like the more I explain, the more I'm being accused of not caring. I want to clarify that I don't dislike Mark personally. I'm just uncomfortable with having a guest for such a long period. I've stayed at friends' apartments for a month before, and it always felt draining. I also need my workspace to be quiet and uninterrupted. I offer to help in other ways, like contributing to temporary housing, running errands for him, or even helping him move his things around. But Lily refuses to consider anything but him staying with me. I also worry about potential tension in my own home. I'm a clean person, and I know that living with someone for a month can create friction over small things like chores, food, noise, or just habits. I don't want our relationship to be strained permanently over a month-long stay. Now, I feel guilty because my sister hasn't spoken to me in days, and I see her posting passive-aggressive things on social media about siblings who won't help. Part of me thinks I might be overreacting, but another part feels like my boundaries are completely reasonable. I genuinely want to support her and Mark, just not in a way that would compromise my mental health and work. I should also mention that Mark seems okay with my boundaries. He told me privately that he understands and doesn't want to impose. Lily, however, insists that he should stay and that I'm letting him down as a sister. So, AITA for refusing to let Mark stay at my apartment for a month. Even though he technically needs somewhere to live temporarily, I feel like my boundaries are being ignored, but I also worry that I might be overreacting and causing unnecessary conflict in my family. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law's cat stay in my house, even though she claims it's temporary. So, this is going to be a long one, and I feel like I need to give a lot of context so people can understand why I did what I did. I, 32F, live with my husband, Jake, 34M, in a small but cozy 2-bedroom apartment in the city. We don't have kids yet, but we do have a dog, a medium-sized Labrador named Bruno, who is very friendly but also very sensitive to new animals in his space. My husband and I have always had very clear boundaries about pets. We both agreed early on that we wouldn't take in any animals that weren't ours without discussing it first, because it would mess with Bruno's routine. He gets stressed when strangers or animals come into his environment, and over the years, we've had some minor issues when people ignored this rule. Here's where the problem started. My sister-in-law, Vanessa, 30F, recently got a new job that requires her to travel a lot. She has a cat, Mr. Whiskers, a very fluffy Maine Coon who apparently is very high maintenance, according to her. Vanessa called my husband one Friday afternoon, out of the blue, and asked if she could leave Mr. Whiskers at our place for a week while she went on a business trip. She said it was just temporary and that she'd be back in a week to get him. I should note that Mr. Whiskers is not just a normal cat. Vanessa described him as very particular about his routine and needing a special diet, certain types of litter, and he doesn't really get along with dogs. I know my dog, and I was immediately worried about potential stress and conflict. I told Jake that I didn't feel comfortable having him in our apartment, even temporarily. Jake seemed hesitant, saying, "It's just a week, come on. It'll be fine. Vanessa really needs this." I explained my concerns. Bruno is not used to cats, especially cats that are very particular. I was worried about aggression, stress, and the potential for him to urinate or scratch furniture out of anxiety. I also mentioned that our apartment is small, and there wouldn't be enough space for both Bruno and Mr. Whiskers to have their own zones. Jake tried to reason with me, saying, "It's family. We can make it work. Just put him in the bedroom for the week, and Bruno will be fine." I told him that separating them isn't a guarantee. Bruno is very sensitive to smells, and he could easily get stressed by a cat being in the apartment. I also told him that I didn't want to take on the responsibility of caring for a cat I didn't know. Vanessa called me directly the next day. She sounded frustrated and said, "I don't get it. It's just a week. Why are you making this a big deal?" I explained politely but firmly that we have a dog with specific needs and that we cannot take on a pet that is not ours. I offered to help her find a boarding facility or a pet sitter, but she dismissed it, saying they were all fully booked. Over the weekend, Jake kept pressuring me. He said I was being unreasonable and not family-oriented because I was refusing to help Vanessa. I tried to explain that saying yes would put both Bruno and Mr. Whiskers at risk, and that it would likely result in a lot of stress and potentially damage furniture or belongings. Jake argued that I was overreacting and that he would handle any issues with Bruno if they arose. I told him that this wasn't fair. I didn't want to risk my dog's well-being for a favor that wasn't even for us. Eventually, Vanessa started sending passive-aggressive texts directly to me, saying things like, "I guess family isn't really important to you, and it's just a cat. Why is this so hard?" I didn't respond beyond restating that we could not host Mr. Whiskers. Jake, meanwhile, became increasingly frustrated with me, saying I was making him choose between his wife and his sister. The tension came to a head when Vanessa showed up at our door anyway, with Mr. Whiskers in a carrier. I was at home, and Jake had gone out to pick up groceries. She expected me to just let him in. I calmly told her again that we couldn't take the cat. She tried to argue in front of me, saying she didn't understand how this could be such a problem. I explained that our dog is not used to cats, that we have a small apartment, and that it would be very stressful for both animals. She rolled her eyes, muttered something about selfishness, and left, but not before sending another text to Jake complaining about me. After that, Jake was very upset. He said I ruined a relationship with his sister and that I was overly rigid. I told him that I understand family is important, but we have to consider the well-being of the pets that are already in our care. Jake said I should have made an exception just this once. I refused. A few days later, Vanessa found another temporary solution and seemed satisfied, but Jake is still giving me the silent treatment and occasionally brings up the family versus pets argument. I feel like I did the right thing because we were not prepared for this, and I didn't want to put Bruno at risk. But Jake clearly thinks I went too far and that I should have just dealt with it. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law's cat stay in our apartment, even temporarily, despite Jake and Vanessa pressuring me. Here are the points I've considered. We never agree to host any pets that aren't ours. Bruno is very sensitive and could get stressed, which could cause behavioral issues. Mr. Whiskers has a very specific routine and diet, which we are unfamiliar with. Our apartment is small, and separating the animals properly would be difficult. I offered alternative solutions like a pet sitter or boarding. Vanessa arrived at our apartment expecting to stay regardless, which I found disrespectful. I feel like this is a boundary issue, and I want to maintain the safety and well-being of my pet. Jake thinks I should have compromised for family. I'm torn because I don't want to seem unreasonable, but I also don't want to compromise my dog's well-being or let someone else's high-maintenance pet stress him out. So, Reddit AITA? AITA for refusing to let my brother's kids stay with me after he moved abroad without warning. I, 35M, have always had a close relationship with my younger brother, Jason, 33M. Growing up, we were inseparable despite having very different personalities. I'm more cautious, organized, and structured, while Jason has always been spontaneous, impulsive, and prone to taking risks without thinking about consequences. We were supportive of each other through school, careers, and personal struggles, and I thought we had a solid foundation of trust. Jason has 2 kids, Lily, 8F, and Max, 6M. I have no children myself, but I've always been fond of them and spent a lot of time helping Jason out when he needed babysitting or moral support. My own schedule is demanding. Full-time job, volunteering on weekends, and maintaining my household, but I've always tried to be there for my brother. Everything changed about a month ago. Jason called me out of the blue and said he was moving to another country for work. I was happy for him, but the conversation quickly turned alarming. He explained that he had signed a contract for a 2-year position and that the relocation was sudden because his employer wanted him to start immediately. He then casually mentioned that he was leaving Lily and Max with me temporarily until he got settled because the school year was about to start and he couldn't enroll them overseas right away. I was shocked. First, there was no prior discussion, no planning, nothing to prepare me. Second, I have a full-time job and a very structured life. Taking care of 2 children full-time on such short notice would be a massive disruption. I told him I needed time to think and suggested he consider local childcare options or temporary guardianship with someone closer to their school. He insisted that I was the only person he trusted, saying, "I know you'll handle them better than anyone else." I explained again that this was not feasible for me, and he said he would arrange things so it would be as smooth as possible. 2 days later, he showed up at my apartment with Lily and Max and their suitcases. I was furious. I tried to be calm and told him I had not agreed to full-time care, that this was unacceptable. He said he had no other options, it was temporary, and that I could just manage it for a few weeks. I reminded him that I have a demanding job and responsibilities, and that suddenly becoming their primary caregiver was unrealistic. He became defensive, saying I was overreacting and that I was letting him down as a brother. Over the next week, things only got worse. Lily and Max are great kids, but the adjustment was extremely difficult. I had to get up earlier, manage meals, help with homework, coordinate their schedules, and handle emotional outbursts. On top of that, I had to communicate with Jason's employer and deal with paperwork he neglected to handle, all while juggling my normal responsibilities. My stress levels skyrocketed, and I started feeling resentful. I eventually called Jason and told him I could not continue caring for the kids full-time. I offered to help with visits, occasional babysitting, and support while he arranged a more permanent solution, but I made it clear that they could not live with me indefinitely. He accused me of being selfish and ungrateful, saying that I was abandoning his children when they needed me most. He also threatened to limit my contact with them if I didn't comply, which I found manipulative and cruel. Since then, our relationship has been tense. My parents are upset with me because they think I should step up for the kids, while my friends mostly support my decision, saying it's unreasonable to expect someone to drop everything and become a full-time guardian without notice. I feel torn because I love my brother and his kids, but I also feel violated and stressed by the sudden imposition on my life. I've tried to compromise by offering financial support, helping him find temporary childcare, and assisting with scheduling, but he refuses to consider these options. He believes that family obligations should be absolute, and that I owe him this level of support just because we're brothers. I've also considered the possibility that if I agree, it could set a dangerous precedent. He might expect me to continue caring for his children anytime he faces inconvenience, and it could seriously affect my career, mental health, and social life. At the same time, I feel guilty because the kids are in an unfamiliar situation and I know they need stability and support. Jason has started sending me long messages expressing anger and disappointment, saying that I'm letting down the family and failing as a brother. He even posted vague messages on social media implying that I am unwilling to help my family in times of need, which has made me feel embarrassed and defensive. I understand that family obligations are important, but I also feel that responsibility should be reasonable and discussed, not forced upon someone at the last minute. My brother made a sudden decision without consulting anyone, expecting me to step into a massive role immediately. I've tried to express my willingness to help in manageable ways, but he refuses to accept anything less than full-time care. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my brother's kids stay with me after he moved abroad without warning, even though it means I might be perceived as abandoning my family. Additional context: Jason has a history of impulsive decisions and expects people to accommodate his lifestyle. He has done similar things before with small favors, often leaving me or my parents scrambling to solve problems he created. I feel like this situation is just a larger, more consequential example of a pattern. I've tried discussing boundaries in the past, but he always pushes back and frames it as me being uncaring. I love my brother, and I care about the kids deeply, but I also need to protect my mental health, professional life, and personal stability. I just can't see how full-time care under these circumstances is fair or sustainable. I'm looking for honest perspectives on whether I'm being unreasonable or if my decision is justified. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.